Today I'm continuing interviews with Jack Sherman. What we're going to talk about today would be from basically the second battle at Marvie onward. We did want to touch base a little bit. Jack, you were with Captain Evans, I believe, when he was wounded during the first battle at Marvie. You had mentioned you had a lot of respect for Captain Evans and his leadership. When I looked back at the reports, especially from the Netherlands and Fusden, he got a lot of high commendations. But when you went to Marvie in that first battle, Division Command seemed to know about the German army being close. Regimental Command and maybe even 2nd Battalion did, but it's pretty apparent that Captain Evans didn't get that information and was totally surprised by the enemy basically coming out of the woods, thinking that they were maybe 40 miles or more away, and then here they come with attacking with a regiment. The Panzer Lehr was basically back behind that woods, and they came out with what amounted to a regiment supported by tanks coming on to these couple of companies there, along with elements of the 10th Armored Division, Team O'Hara, there at Marvie. But anyway, just want to talk a little bit about Captain Evans and what you remember about his wounding there at Marvie.
Well, we moved in when we moved into Marvie. Gosh, I'm thinking it was maybe around by the time we got there and got to a position we figured we were going to stay. I think it might have been about 11 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. And Captain Evans I think he had assigned some sectors to different platoons. And we were out in from the CP, and I found out later there was quite an adequate farmhouse that was the CP, but I didn't remember it. I still don't really remember it and such. But we were out in the field. We had a good observation, and everything that I heard was and felt in my own mind, the Krauts were 40 miles away. Now, there was just no urgency at all to get set up and so on. But we began, we were setting up, and Captain Evans was right in the company area there, not too far from the CP. And of course, we had the headquarters guys around, and they were digging in. Just one of the first things you do, you stop, and you think you're going to be there for a while, you start digging in. And a few of the guys started digging in, and we were out in the field, out in the open. And I didn't even recognize a stone building. I didn't even recognize that there was a tank destroyer on our side of the building. And as we looked up, or as I looked up, I spotted the German coming out of the woods. First, I keep saying, it looked like paint, gray paint flowing out of a green something. And I just didn't concentrate on it too much. And then it was moving. So just about the time I really got to thinking maybe it was something that I didn't want to know was there, the tank destroyer moved out from its cover from the group coming out of the woods, moved out from behind the stone building, swung its turret around and fired a shot real fast and backed up immediately behind the building. And that's when everything broke loose. Well, Evans, as I recall, there was two guys in particular. One was a little, we called him a hillbilly, real nice guy, had a thin mustache, small kind of a guy. He was one of the two. The other guy I'm not sure of. And they were digging in, and for some reason or other, Captain Evans just didn't like, I guess, where they were digging in, and ordered them to change location. And I remember one of the guys was yelling, "Get the hell down! You're pointing us out to the enemy," you know. And by this time, we knew that the mass that I saw across the road or across the open area, were in fact Krauts. And then all hell broke loose. We were taking incoming fire. This tank destroyer was popping out from behind that stone building, getting off a shot and getting back into it. And just things got real hectic. And of course, we headed for cover. Captain Evans was hit in the head. And I don't know, I think a couple guys took him back to the CP. He wasn't down, but he was hit, obviously. And a couple of the guys were helping him back to the CP. And that's about all I remember from there. It was hectic from then on. And it was, I know we were fighting for a long time, and I know that we finally wound up back into Marvie proper, rather than being out in the field. That's about the best I can do on that.
Okay. So, did you see anything to indicate that there might have been some friendly fire involved in his wounding?
Yeah, there was. How can I put it? There was a little bit of antagonism about being told, and where to dig in and so on. And the main thing that I recall is that we were pushed back, and after we got back into the position again, the two guys that were told to dig another place were dead in their foxhole.
It's a traumatic experience. For those of you who are listening to this, that particular place would be near Hill 500. Would be located south of the church, on the south of the bridge that was later blocked in the second battle. Just to give you an idea of what part of Marvie that happened on, and I'll have a map that I'll pop up here that kind of show where that location would have been at in Marvie. So then the next several days, the weather turns much colder.
Yes.
You want to just talk briefly about the cold at Bastogne?
Oh, it was cold. It was cold, and I can recall one time we were out in the field. I don't know exactly whether it might have been on. We oftentimes dug in right at the edge of tree line, so on, or inside the tree line to get a little cover and so on. And I remember digging a hole, getting a real good hole, and it was I don't know what day it was. It was maybe the second or third day. And it had snowed the night. I got comfortable in the hole, and as comfortable as I could get. And it snowed through, and got some sleep. I actually got some sleep, I must have. And I woke up in the morning, and we heard all sorts of firearms going off. There was a lot of action going on, and I tried to get out of the hole, and there had been about a foot of snow in addition to the depth of my hole, and my body heat had condensed on the side of the hole, and the sides of the hole was icy. And I knew doggone well I'd just best not be staying in that hole and let somebody come up on me without seeing me or without seeing them. And so I had one heck of a time getting out of the hole. And as I recall, I think I used my trench knife to stick in the side of the hole and use it as a footstep to bounce myself out. And I was out of the hole and didn't get back into it because the firefight was hectic. I think that's when the company CP moved into a building. I think it was the basement of a building. Or maybe I'd been outside that building, I'm not sure. But we were under, the Krauts had set up machine guns on, I think, all corners of the house to fire at anybody trying to leave the house. They really had us pinned in. And
if I could set the stage here for our listeners, things were relatively quiet for a couple of days after the first fight. And then at about dusk, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or so, on December 23rd, the enemy attacked Marvie again, this time in force and across a much more broad front. Okay. It's basically from the Arlon Road to the west. I don't know how to pronounce these villages. I need to learn that someday. All the way to east of Marvie up the Wilts Road, and they attacked in force with tanks and infantry, and it was really quite a dramatic fight.
That must have been the time.
Yes, that's when that time would have been, and basically over to the west along the Arlon Road, F Company, as well as a small squad with Lieutenant Hibbard, got pushed back from the bridge north up towards about even or maybe a little bit further north of the Kessler farm.
Right.
Where Don was at, which was near this Delperdang farm, is now. I think it's called the Salwhite Farm or something like that, on another road maybe a third of a mile east of the Arlon Road. Just to his east, F Company was in the woods there, and they got pushed back and routed. Out of there, the command post had to flee. A guy by the name of Harry Bliss covered their retreat. Harry was killed the next day. And then in Marvie, Hill 500, just on the south part of town, was overrun with tanks. Here you had a light infantry with no real support. Was overrun with Lieutenant Morrison. If you remember Lieutenant Morrison.
I remember.
And Al Borzamowski was on the hill, and he recalled having a tank rural right over his foxhole.
Yeah.
And in Marvie, to the north of Marvie along the Wilts Road, Team O'Hara had their hands full with tanks. E Company was desperately trying to hold on to the north part. What basically clogged up the road, actually to keep them advancing clear through Marvie, was near the church right across there where 2nd Battalion, where the CP was. Tom Nyland, Lieutenant Tom Nyland, who was the S2 officer for the battalion, had set up some machine guns, and before the Germans would move through tanks, they'd set up machine guns first, and they took out those machine guns. And maybe giving too much detail here to follow, but on Hill 500, one of Team O'Hara's vehicles tried to flee, pulling an artillery piece, and they actually got hit by American fire because in the dark they didn't know who it was, and it ended up blocking the bridge. Well, a couple of German tanks had already advanced past that point, and they became trapped, and a couple of men from Lieutenant Nyland's crew dropped a grenade down the hatch from that building, which was the 2nd Battalion HQ. That was Feeney and a guy whose name escapes me right now, but he was from Ohio. I do remember that. But like I said, yeah, G Company was routed. That's where it comes in with you being in the company command post. Of course, Lieutenant Evans is not there. He's been wounded. I believe it was probably Lieutenant Regenberg.
Regenberg, right.
That was in command there, and he was new to the company, and you guys were pinned inside of that house.
Right.
If you want to pick it up from there and tell us what happened.
We knew, of course, that we were pinned in the house, and one of the runners, searched for his name, and I just can't come up with it. I know he was from Brooklyn, and he was a replacement, about the same time as I was a replacement. And he kind of panicked and said that, was kind of claiming that we were done for. They were going to come in and get us and so on. And there was a window near on one side of the house. And we thought, or he must have thought that maybe it was one of the unguarded sides of the house. And he made a exit through the window and was gunned down. He was the only one that tried to leave, and he was killed. And it wasn't too much longer. Somewhere or other we got the clear signal that we were no longer in danger of being shot if we left the house. They had cleared out the machine gunners the German machine gunners that were stationed at the corner. I can remember that very distinctly, that there was one of their tactics, of course, was to, get fire on all four sides of a place they had surrounded with enemy inside. So we got out of there. Exactly what happened after that, I don't know. I don't remember.
Sure. It's kind of interesting looking back when I interviewed a lot of the guys. The one battle that they seem to have the hardest time with memory about is the second fight at Marvie. And I wonder how much the desperation of the situation and the trauma might have had to do with that, because it was hard getting information.
Yeah, it was. It was helter skelter. Some fellows who have a better memory than I, a few of them I've talked to, have mentioned things that I have no recollection of. We had one guy in our outfit who was a runner. I think his name was Hefferon. And while after we were relieved in Bastogne, he was mentioning about some of the events that I had no recollection of. And he was a runner with me. So
descriptions from the battle, people talked about seeing the white-clad enemy troops with their snow gear on and sheets to keep from being seen in the snow, and how one of the tanks that tried approaching the south part of Marvie, when they got a little bit past that bridge on the south part, ended up getting hit by a bazooka shot from, I think, the 326 engineers. There was a crew there, and they had phosphorus shells in there, and basically some of the German tanks pounded the city, and the phosphorus shells kind of lit things up, which actually exposed some of the German troops as well in the nighttime sky. But in a nutshell, in finishing up this particular part, the enemy basically had 2nd Battalion. In terms of strategically, they had overwhelming power.
Oh, yeah.
Outnumbered you guys, far more heavy weapons and tanks, etc. It was a desperate situation. And when you look at the reports from the 327, they actually got about 4 or 5 tanks just on the outskirts of Bastogne, but they still they still couldn't make it through the center part of Marvie due to blockages and the desperate fight that was going on there. Apparently, the German commander's command post was a mobile one, got hit by an artillery shell, and it killed everybody in the command post but him. which caused some disarray in communications. And then the Supreme Commander had also informed them that he wanted to come the next day and lead the attack. And so there's a lot of theories as to why they broke off the attack, but it was definitely a desperate situation. And 2nd Battalion, the 10th Armored, and the 326 Engineers definitely put up a remarkable fight there. It amazes me how this story went untold for so long until relatively recent history, or at least people maybe forgot about it, but you guys did.
Well, the thing is that, you know, we had nothing to compare it to. You know, we didn't know, but what almost everybody, it was the infantry, might be going through the same stuff. And we find out later that it wasn't. You know, that we were really outnumbered and outgunned and the whole bit. And from what I've read, I think a lot of our salvation is due to McAuliffe's brilliance in directing the artillery. I don't remember any outgoing, but there must have been in our sector during those battles. I don't know.
And then after the battle, I believe it was the next day, the G Company was attacked by friendly aircraft.
Yes, I remember that distinctly. They were somewhere or other. We got the word and panels to put out for identification. The weather had broken. We had actually seen the gliders coming in and the relief paratroopers and so on. We had seen those coming in, and that was really a wonderful sight. But just shortly after that, or maybe even during that drop, the fighters came in, and we were told to put out panels. Where they came from or who had it, I don't know. But where I was at in a building, and I thought it was with Don, but I'm not sure, with someone else in the company, and we were near this 3-story house, brick or stone, one of the two, and a P-47 came in, and just almost the minute he started coming towards us, we knew he was out for us. Of course, the lines were so close that, you know, we didn't think about it at the time, but thought of it later. But this P-47 came in, and I can distinctly remember, I think I heard each one of the 850 calibers chunking away, letting loose 50 caliber bullets at us. And it was coming right at us. And when it got, we thought, too close, we made a dive, the fellow I was with, and we made a dive in through the door of this house. And there was a small, short landing and a long stairway to their basement. And we both hit about the same time and wound up in the basement. And I think about halfway down the stairs, we heard this terrible roar. I mean, like, it was, the world exploded. And found out later that they had let the P-47, in addition to letting loose with the 850s, let loose of some rockets that hit right at the base of this house. And then it stopped. Just as fast as it started, it stopped. And so as soon as we felt we were clear, we got up, went out of the basement, and went outside again. And then we actually were able to see several different aircraft making runs at German positions and or tanks. And we could actually see black spots in the snow where maybe a tank had been hit. It was hard for us to tell. But it was almost like being spectator at a football game. And all of a sudden you had no fear of being shot at because you see that the enemy was really getting pounded. And it was, we almost, I almost think we might have cheered. I don't know. But it was such a relief and such a thing to see. And after it quieted down, we went into the house, and the beds in the second floor from the top, the mattresses were all just blown apart by those 50 caliber shells. They really raised heck with the house. But it was a sight to see. And like I said, we're almost a cheering section for them. You could actually see individual planes going for different targets. Tanks, you couldn't see sometimes what they were, but you would eventually see a great big black spot in the snow on the enemy side. It was really quite a treat.
Okay. Imagine. Well, I'll try to limit these to about a half an hour, so
Okay.
We appreciate your candor.